Hello, everyone, and thank you so much for joining me for Daily Spark. You guys know who I am. I'm Dr. Angela Butts-Chester, and you know what I like to do on my show. Say it with me. I want to enlighten, inspire, and empower you to become your best self. Now, scripture reminds us that the tongue is a small thing that makes grand speeches, but a tiny spark can set a great forest on fire. And that's what we want to do today. Today, we are talking about Women's History Month with the Dr. Anita Jack-Davies. So you know what I'm going to tell you to do. Go on, get comfy, get cozy, get your coffee or get your tea, because we are about to get started. Hello, Dr. Anita. Thank you so much for joining me here on Daily Spark.
Thank you for having me. So happy to be here.
Absolutely, absolutely. I love the all that you do, and I cannot wait to introduce you to some of my listeners and my viewers as well. Now, I realize that I may be introducing you to some new people. So, with that being said, first question for you is tell us a little bit about yourself. What makes you you?
Absolutely. This is always a tricky question. I am an author. I'm also an HR consultant. I've been working in the area of culture and operations for the last 12 to 15 years. And I really love what I do. My life's mission is to write and teach the world about social justice. So I try to keep that at my core. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And I love that we as a society are starting to look at social justice a little differently because it's different for each person. Like each individual case is
Yeah.
unique and special, while there is still a very broad brush that we can use and paint along the way as well. So thank you for drawing attention to that. Now, this year's Women's History Month theme is Leading the Change, Women Shaping a Sustainable Future.
Mhm.
Well, I also love the fact that International Women's Day was just a few days ago,
Yep.
and that theme was Give to Gain. I love how they kind of blend it together. So,
Yeah.
taking that step back and looking at the entire month, many women give their time, they give their expertise, their emotional labor, their leadership. You see where I'm going with that.
Yes.
Your perspective as a cross-cultural, inclusive strategist, what would you say is the context here for you? How are you helping to be that person with changing a sustainable future?
Sure. I always like to think of myself as someone who has been mentored and then someone who is also looking to mentor the younger generation, but also women who might be more junior than I may be in the workplace. And what I find is, I remember when I was there looking up to senior women, thinking, oh, wow, how did they get here? What did they do to, earn this position? And at times I couldn't see their struggle. And now that I am the senior person, I'm able to look back and say, oh, I will take the time to get to know this person. I will take the time to say, hey, is there anything that I can help you with? And sometimes it's as simple as a recommendation letter, or it could be, I had someone say to me recently, can you please be my mentor? And it usually doesn't come in such a formal ask, but I always try to think about what might they be needing, and then what did I need at that time, and how can I ensure that I'm giving to them in an authentic way.
Hmm, hmm.
Yeah.
I love how you address it from such a mindful place that it's not just about your current experience of now, but being reflective and also, what can I take forward? I love that, which is great because that leads me to my next question for you. And
Mhm.
that is in your field of work, what does it mean for women to give in ways that create this lasting gain, not just for themselves, but for future generations? Now, of course, we know we don't have enough time for you to give that full and complete answer, but what is an example of what that looks like?
Sure. I think it's important for women in the workplace and everywhere to always think about the fact that wherever we are creating value. So I like to think about it as, if this person wasn't here, what would the void be? Rather than waiting, for some big thing, sometimes it might just be, this person completed a project and her signature is all over it. The way she speaks, the way she carries herself, the way she produces something has her signature on it. And I don't ever want to be it, inauthentic. I don't ever want to not be myself in the workplace. So I encourage women to, if we feel comfortable wearing a dress, or as you said before, wearing that red lipstick, I encourage women to show up the way that we feel comfortable in our own skins, and to show up as us, and not to be and to be unapologetic about it. I love that phrase that you'd mentioned. Hmm.
Mhm. Now, for those who are unfamiliar, I'm sure most of you are. One of the things that I have carried forward in my line, as far as my family is concerned, is my signature wearing of red lipstick. My grandmother wore red lipstick. It was
Yes.
kind of a given of, a lady never leaves the house without
Yeah.
a little something on her lip.
Right.
And that is one of the ways in which I take my family with me in what
Hmm.
I do and how I do it.
Right.
So everyone, I love that. Everyone has that thing that they do that kind of encourages them so that they're able to encourage others.
Yes.
Now, speaking of doing awesome and amazing things, Dr. Anita, you have led large scale inclusion strategies across federal agencies and institutions.
Hmm.
What do women often give inside organizations that perhaps is invisible? A little bit of that behind the scenes that we're not always aware of.
Absolutely. I'm so glad you mentioned this. Sometimes, and I see this happening even in the workplace today, sometimes it's just a lot of the work that we wouldn't say this is paid work, but I call it that, invisible labor. So it could just be, talking to, people before the meeting, talking to colleagues before the meeting, walking around and ensuring that if someone's not there, you might be the person that might the female will be the person to open the door and say, oh, by the way, the meeting began and we're missing you. And this may not be in someone's job description per se, but for me, that's a labor. Right. So if that person wasn't there, to me, that would be a huge void. And so I want women to think about every single thing that we do, every single thing that we bring to the table is adding value. You are adding to the overall project that is taking place.
I love that. And you are so right. I find that so many women, just in having discussion, if you feel that you are a natural hostess, if you have the party and you love hosting and
Yes,
making sure that everyone is comfortable and happy and they are seen at the events that you do, many times we
yes.
also roll that over into our business as well, right? And that is
Absolutely.
part of that unspoken. You want to spend time with each person who is at the event, who's on the stage, who's at the table, however. And it really and truly does make a difference. And far too many women are not factoring that into the cost of business. So I think they definitely should be able to reap that. Yeah, I love that you are saying that. Well, it is time for us to take a very short break, but before we do, I'm sure someone is saying, "Ooh, I love what she's talking about. I want more." If someone wants to reach out to you or they would like to utilize your services, what is the best way to
Sure.
do that?
Right. They can find me on my website, anitajackdavies.com. And I'm also on LinkedIn, Dr. Anita Jack-Davies, and on Instagram as well. Say Dr. Anita Jack-Davies.
I love it. Alrighty, everyone. Now you know where you can take a visit. We'll be back right after this. Are you ready for a pick me up? Be enlightened, inspired, and empowered with Daily Spark with Dr. Angela. We are back. Thank you so much for joining me for Daily Spark. Dr. Anita, I want to ask you about, you mentioned that you are an author, and I want to
Mhm.
ask you about your book. I love that it is one that wasn't just written for the sake of saying, hey, you guys, did you know that I also have a book about that? But instead, this is really one that talks about loss, it talks about belonging, it talks about women, it talks about connection. Can you tell us about this book of yours?
Yes, absolutely. Thank you so much for the opportunity. The book is called Lawrencia's Last Parang on Loss and Belonging as a Black Woman in Canada. I was born in Toronto, but my family is from a place called Trinidad in the Caribbean. And I was actually raised by my grandparents because my biological mother had me as a teenager and couldn't take care of me. So my grandparents said, well, she's born already, so we might as well step in. And that was one of the best things and most loving things that they could have done. So when my mother, who's actually my grandmother, passed away, Lawrencia, I was distraught, as so many of us are when we lose a mother or a significant other in our lives. And I said to my father, I said, what am I going to do now that she's gone? And I promised him that I would actually write a book about our lives and her life. And, I said it and I didn't really think about it. And on his deathbed, he says to me, whatever happened to that book about your mother? And I was like, oh my God, oh my goodness, I hadn't been doing anything. And I promised him then that I would write that book. And 10 years later, I actually published the book. And other than my daughter, Kennedy, I would say that that book is one of the most important things that I've done in my life because her legacy lives on. When I see the book in Russia and in Japan and in Brazil, and I see the picture on the cover, I think, oh, now the world gets to love her the way I love her. And that makes me feel better.
Oh, that is such a wonderful story. And kudos to Papa for asking about the book, right? I firmly believe that everything happens in God's perfect timing, even though sometimes it seems like in our world it may be too early or too late. It absolutely is the perfect time. And what a great way of, like you said, keeping her legacy alive, introducing her to new people. And what I find is that we are able to inspire people even if we're unaware of it. Like we may never talk to the people who read our books, but
Right.
there's someone somewhere going, man, that was such a good, so
Thank you.
glad that you followed through and decided to share her with the rest of the world. That great job there.
Thank you.
Now, you talk about inclusion as well as representation, and I love that you focus on, let's call it belonging, because
Hmm.
we don't always have the same thing that makes us the same. Like it's not always about being a woman, it's not always about the workplace, but it could be belonging in that it's a country
Yes.
or a
Yes.
territory, right? What is the difference for you? And
Hmm.
why does belonging create such a long-term gain when we think
Yes.
about it?
I think belonging is really important. I think for a long time, especially when I was growing up, we went to work, but belonging wasn't something that was automatic because I remember listening to my older aunts and uncles and them coming home and talking about stories where they were sort of watching other people, get the promotions. They were watching other people take part. And I think today, given all the gains that we've made, belonging now means that I get to come to the table. The table's not, it's not always an open invitation. Sometimes, as we know, we might have to, invite ourselves, but it's coming to the table knowing that I'm going to make a contribution. And belonging for me is, when we are making decisions about where this agency is going, where this organization is going, do I have a voice? When we think about who might be promoted, am I a consideration? I may not have the qualifications today, but am I being mentored as someone who could possibly be there? And for me, that's the difference between how we look at belonging now and how we might have looked at it in the past.
Oh, I love that because I tell everyone that when we talk about this thing called inclusion or diversity, that it doesn't always have to be the definition that someone else has put out for us, right?
Yeah, yeah,
Because my diversity, my inclusion has nothing to do with my being a woman or being a person of color. It's
right,
faith for me,
right.
right?
Sure. Yes, yes,
People of faith come in all genders, all shapes and sizes, as we say,
right.
right? So when we look at this belonging, I love that you are asking how can we make sure that more people are belonging as
Mm,
opposed to more people being excluded.
right.
There's always going to be some reason to not tick a checkbox.
Sure.
So
That's right.
let's see how we can have more voices to make the song more harmonious. I love that. Now, as we look at Women's History Month, what lessons from the women that you have worked with, that have mentored you, that have
Mhm.
just even perhaps been an inspiration, an unspoken inspiration to you, how have they come into the framework for you
Mhm.
in the way that you operate, not just professionally in your life, but perhaps without giving it all, personally as well. Sometimes they inspire, a professional person can inspire us personally, not just
Yeah.
professionally.
It's interesting that you asked me this because in my life, I had a hairdresser who was a woman of faith, and I would go to her, often, and you know how important our hair is in our community. And one day she said to me, as a woman of faith, I'm just letting you know that God wants you to just go for it. You don't have to wait anymore. That's what he's telling me to tell you. And I was just floored. I was floored that she took the time to tell me that if I was, experiencing an imposter syndrome, if I was thinking maybe I didn't belong, she was saying, hey, even if you feel that way, keep pushing through. You're supposed to be there. They wouldn't call you if they didn't want you in the first place, and I need you to claim it. And for a long time, I was sitting back kind of being polite, and she was like, no. You don't have to be polite about it. That's where God wants you to be. So go and claim what He has provided for you and actually go and serve the gifts that He has given you. You know why? Because the world is waiting for it. So what are you waiting for? And that question has remained with me. And when I have moments where I'm thinking, oh, I'm not sure and a little bit hesitant, I fall back into, you know what? Someone's waiting for my gift and I can't not serve it to them. It's my obligation to serve them the gifts that God has given me in my life.
Oh, what an inspiration. Hearing you tell the story and it's about your life, I'm sitting there thinking, oh my goodness, I would have had goosebumps. I would have needed to have a seat, like give me a moment. Like I need to take all of this in because I love how God works through so many different people in different ways, and it's not
Yes,
always the same way, but the message always
yes,
comes through. And we
yes,
always know the difference between someone being encouraging to us and
yes,
that being a God moment. And
yes.
that was like 1000% a God moment. And yeah, just imagine if she had not followed the instruction that God gave
Right,
her of open your mouth, say
right.
this to her because today is the day that she needs to hear that. So,
Yes.
oh my goodness. So if anyone out there is ever wondering, is the Lord telling me? Yes. Like
Yep,
absolutely.
you're being told.
And especially if you keep getting that prompting, because we
Yes.
know the difference between us just wanting to say something
Oh,
and
yes.
God giving us that directive. So
Yes.
please definitely do that directive. Now, speaking of women leaders, and I'm so glad that you are reminding us to step up and to step out. Women leaders who want to drive the culture of their brand, their business, their community. Sometimes we hear them talk about the isolation that they
Mm,
experience, right?
yes, yes.
What is a practical step of something that you can suggest to help women through this time in
Right.
leadership that we all have experienced? Now, again, I know this is kind of a loaded question and we don't have time to go over all of that, but if it was just a snippet of advice,
Okay,
what would you give?
okay. My answer is not conventional, but my answer is I believe we all need to create our own personal board of directors. And the board of directors doesn't necessarily have to come from our workplace. So in my life, my board of directors includes my daughter, who's 17, my aunt Erilyn, who is my mentor, my confidant, my other aunt, whose name is Marion. She's a confidant mostly about the workplace. She has this incredible wisdom. And then I have a really good friend. Her name is Maria, and we met at Toronto Metropolitan University and we became friends. The moment we met, we just knew that we loved each other. But without this board of directors, this personal board of directors, I don't know if I would have been as successful in my life because when something is not right with my spirit, when I read the Bible and I'm still searching, I sometimes say, hey, you know what? I know God is prompting me to do X. I am going to follow his guidance. However, I'm also obligated to learn from the people that know me the best. And that board is what I think we all need. And it's something that we can pull together in our lives. It might take some time. We may have to test the spirits. We're not just going to pull anyone into our board because remember, this is our lives. This is important. We can't afford to bring the wrong people in. And so I think once we know who those people are and once God tells us who that circle should be, I think that board is one of the most important things we can do. Yeah.
That is so wonderful. And I love that it's a diverse group, right? Just by the titles of the people that you have given, from your daughter to your aunt. And you know that that's different ages. So you have a very modern way because she knows you through her lens of a young person, but also the way in which she
Mhm.
loves you. And then your aunt, you know that she's of a different generation, but also the lens of her experience and wisdom. And she also loves you. But
Right.
from one end to the other end of that spectrum, neither person is going to give you bad advice or let you, hit your head up against the wall. So I love that you are encouraging us to think outside of the box, that it doesn't have to always just be someone who is within our age group, that it can be
Right.
a mix of people and be
Yes.
able to get that full rounded experience. I love that. Now, one last question for you.
Sure.
Now, in that spirit of women leading the change and us providing a way for a sustainable future, what do you believe women stand to gain over, let's say, a 5 year or 10-year period? Is there anything that you think that we are all collectively moving toward?
I would like to say we need to move towards trusting our voices. Today, in a meeting, a board meeting for our senior leadership team, one of my managers, she was in charge of, we're having a staff appreciation day, and she was in charge of ordering, doing the catering. And my president said, you know what, that's not, I don't think you're doing it the right way. And she pulled me aside and she said, you know what, AJ, he's wrong. I've hosted many parties and I know how much to order. And I said, you know what, you go with your gut because we know how to cook. And we agreed when two people touch and agree, that's where the Lord is. We agreed that that's what she was going to do. And that's what she did. And I think sometimes we second guess ourselves when a voice comes in as the voice of reason, when our gut and everything, our spirit, when the Lord is speaking to us. And I'm saying, listen to that still soft voice because we know that that still soft voice is the truth. And I am not going to deny that anymore. And every time I've done that, I've always paid a price, a tremendous price. So I believe I'm encouraging us to move towards that authentic voice and to listen to that voice at all times.
Oh my goodness. As you were sharing that, I'm just thinking about the number of times that I've heard women leave somewhere and now they're in their girl group, their friendship group, and they're saying they wouldn't listen to me. I was trying to explain it to them and tell them how I was right, and that person was 100% not listening to them. And they were just going around and around and around with it. Then, flip side of that coin, I'm thinking about another young man that I know that he quite simply said, sometimes it's easier to just say, okay, and then go do what you know is right. Like that person, if you just say, okay, they're going to leave it alone. They're going to drop it. But
Yes,
if God has given you, and he is definitely a spirit-led individual, if
yes.
God has given you, like you said, that direction,
Mm-hmm.
why am I wasting my time trying to
100%.
convince them when I already know what God has told me to do? And each time I say, you're a wise young man there. Good job. Good job. So it is so encouraging to hear someone say, trust what God has placed inside of you. Your
Yes,
discernment is there for a reason. I
yes.
love it. I love it. Dr. Anita, I have enjoyed my conversation with you today. Thank you so much for coming on and spending some time with us here. We are talking for Women's History Month, but let's be honest, women are making history all throughout the year. So whenever someone hears this, sees this, watches this, we want to encourage them and know that we are there for them. If someone wants to reach out to you, what is the best way that they should do that?
They can reach out on my website, and that is anitajackdavies.com. And they can also find me on Instagram, or they can find me on LinkedIn. And I'm quite active and I do get back. Yeah, to everyone.
I
Hmm.
love it. Of course, it's available here on the screen and in the description. And your book, of course, is available on Amazon and wherever books are sold. So everyone, please take a moment to check that out. Dr. Anita, thank you so much for being a guest here today on Daily Spark.
Thank you so much for having me. Been lovely. Thank you.
Absolutely. And listeners, viewers, thank you for spending some time with me here today as well. You could have been anywhere and you chose to spend it with me today, and I thank you for doing so. As always, may the Lord continue to shine his face upon you. May you receive his grace and his mercy in all that you do. Until next time, everyone, remember that you are blessed in the Lord. Have a great day, everyone. Bye-bye.